My name is Hilda. I'm 60 years old, and my hands still smell like river mud. 3 days ago, our son Damian and his wife, Melissa, drove us out past Cold Spring, up a narrow road that curls along the Hudson like a snake. They said the overlook had views worth framing. The wind came off the water, sharp as glass. I remember Melissa's perfume, sweet, fake vanilla, and the way Damian's jaw kept ticking like a broken metronome. Then they moved in tandem, 4 hands, 1 decision. And Henry and I were flying, time stretched like taffy. I remember Henry's fingers clawing for me, missing, the color of the sky shifting from blue to white foam, rocks blurred, branches lashed. The drop was 90 feet, they said later. It felt like a mile. The river swallowed us hard. The world went dark, then louder than any church choir I've ever heard. My lungs begged. My knees hit something. I spun. The shoreline flashed like a film strip stuttering in an old projector. Somewhere above, my son's voice was a knife. "Don't move," Henry rasped, his lips against my ear as I bobbed up, blind with pain. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." He pressed my shoulder down into the brown water, just enough to wash the shine of life from my face. Every inch of me screamed to thrash and claw for shore, but the thought of Damian watching from the cliff pinned me still. I tasted iron. I smelled rocks and weeds. My husband's breath grew ragged, but steady. He understood something I didn't. From the overlook came silence, then the faint crunch of tires shifting gravel. The car door. The slam. I dared a glance through my lashes, past a raft of leaves clinging to my cheek. I saw only sky. A hawk circled like it had been waiting for us. Henry counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3. And at 10, he loosened his grip just enough to lift me by my armpits toward the reeds. "Slow," he whispered. "Stay limp." We drifted sideways, letting the river carry our bodies like trash the current didn't want to keep. We wedged behind a fallen log, belly down in a clutch of cattails. My sweater was shredded. 1 shoe gone. My left elbow felt like a jar rattling loose on a shelf. Henry's face was the color of paper, one eye already ballooning purple. He blinked off blood. "Are they gone?" I mouthed. He held up a trembling finger, warning me to wait. The river hissed. Cars hummed far away. Somewhere a train horn mourned its way down the valley. Finally, he nodded once, then winced, and the nod fell into a cough. "Hilda," he whispered, swallowing like his throat had broken glass. "Listen to me. We don't have time." He tucked my hair behind my ear the way he did on our wedding night, some instinct older than either of us. He was never... He stopped to pull air, grimacing. "He was never your son." The words shattered against my ribs. For a second, the pain in my body evaporated, replaced by something worse, like a cathedral collapsing from the inside, marble and stained glass pulverizing into dust. "What did you say?" I asked. Barely sound. The reeds whispered against us, nodding in the wind. Henry's hand shook as he pressed it over mine. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "But first, we have to get out of this water and disappear. If he comes back and sees movement..." He didn't finish. The meaning hung like smoke. I looked up at the cliff again, my eyes searching for any small figure, any shadow against the sky. Nothing. Just the indifferent blue, and the hawk, making perfect circles above a river that carried secrets without complaint. We crab-crawled along the muck, our bodies heavy and disobedient. Every push sent fireworks through my shoulders. Henry slid first, dragging his right leg like it belonged to someone else. I hooked my fingers into the muddy bank and pulled. The smell of algae clung to us, a new skin. We reached a sliver of shore hidden by brush, a place where the water whispered and the world felt far away. I collapsed against the roots of a thin tree and stared at the trembling veins in its leaves. My heart pounded like a fist on a locked door. "I don't understand," I said, and my voice sounded like it came from a different woman, someone who hadn't ironed Damian's shirts for school, hadn't waited up for him to come home from dates, hadn't stocked the pantry with his favorite barbecue chips. Images flashed. The summer we built the raised garden bed behind our little ranch house in White Plains. Damian in a Yankees cap we bought at a kiosk near Grand Central. Melissa smiling too long across our dining table the night they announced their engagement. My memories felt counterfeit, stamped crooked. Henry leaned back, swallowing pain. I lied, he said. 25 years ago. It started with a lie meant to save you. He closed his eyes, inhaling through his teeth. But we can't do this here. We need to move. He looked at the hill above us, a slope of dirt, rocks, and stubborn grass. If we can make that tree line, we'll be out of sight. I stared at the climb and felt the cruel distance between my 60-year-old joints and the 25-year-old woman I still believed I was when I looked at wedding photos. We started up. The slope gave us nothing for free. My palms found rocks slick as soap. Henry grunted at every step. One more, he whispered. One more. A twig snapped under my knee like a bone. We reached the edge of the woods, a fringe of oak and maple that swallowed the sun and made the air cooler. I turned back. From this angle, the river looked gentle, like a ribbon idly swimming through the valley. That made me angry. How dare beauty cover this violence? How dare the day keep shining? We pushed deeper among trees, birds erupting into frantic wings ahead of us. My sweater snagged on a branch and tore further. I left a wool ghost clinging to bark. We found a hollow between two boulders carpeted with last year's leaves. Henry eased himself down with a hiss. For a long minute we just breathed. The world thinned to the sound of our lungs. I studied Henry like a stranger, this man who painted our porch last spring, who cut coupons, who held my feet under the blanket when I got cold. A liar, a savior, both. When I had Damian, I began, but my voice broke. I had always told the story the same way. Blizzard in March, the drive to the hospital in Yonkers, my mother praying on the phone, the doctor with kind eyes, the first cry like a trumpet. The story was a quilt I wrapped around myself on lonely nights. Hilda, Henry said, and his tone was apology and command at once. The doctor with kind eyes. He had debts. The hospital needed quiet. I needed to bring you home whole. I made a choice. God forgive me. I stared at him, at the leaf stuck to his cheek, at the way his chest rose unevenly. The forest hummed with insects, oblivious. A train clattered somewhere distant, carrying other people living ordinary days. You tell me the rest, I said, or I go down that hill and I scream until the hawk answers. He managed a grim smile. That's my girl, he whispered, then winced again. I will, I promise. He looked past me, scanning the woods. But you need to promise me something first. Whatever you hear, you keep breathing. You don't stop. I nodded because there was nothing else left in me to do. Somewhere in the muscle-deep ache, a colder feeling formed, a blade sharpening. A woman can suffer and still hunt the truth. I wiped mud from my lips. I thought of Damian's face as he walked us to the edge, how he didn't look at me when I said his name. Why? I asked the trees, the hawk, the river, myself. Why would he do this? Henry pressed his head back against the stone and closed his eyes. Because we taught him to love a lie, he said, and he learned it too well. The night fell heavy in that hollow between the boulders, the air damp and thick with the perfume of wet soil. Henry dozed in fits, jerking awake each time pain reminded him he wasn't safe. I sat hunched, knees hugged to my chest, watching the moon crawl across the cracks of leaves above us. My mind replayed his words on a loop, like a broken cassette. He was never your son. Every image I had of Damian flickered, unstable. Him at 5 years old, rushing into the kitchen in superhero pajamas. Him at 12, sulking after striking out in Little League. Him at 17, gripping the steering wheel too tightly the first time he drove us to church. I wanted to hold those memories close, but suddenly they felt fragile, like postcards from a trip I never really took. When dawn came, gray and cold, Henry touched my wrist. We have to move, he whispered. His voice was barely there. The longer we stay, the more chance they'll realize we survived. My legs shook as we crawled out from our shelter, my body stiff like old wood. Every sound in the forest became a threat. The rustle of squirrels, the snap of branches, even the wind itself felt like it carried Damian's footsteps. As we stumbled deeper into the trees, my mind betrayed me with flashbacks. Damian at 8, standing in the backyard in White Plains, with a stick he called his sword. He swung at the air, laughing, until he struck a robin's nest. The crack of eggs against the ground silenced me. I remember rushing out, horrified, scooping tiny broken shells into my hands. Damian just stared, his face unreadable. Henry pulled me inside that day and whispered, Boys do foolish things. Don't make it more than it is. But even then, I felt a knot in my stomach. I'd never said it aloud. We found a thin trail that wound toward a service road, hidden under canopies of oak. Henry leaned on me, each step dragging, his face pale as candle wax. "We'll get to town," he said. "Then I'll tell you everything." But the words weren't enough anymore. I stopped him, gripping his arm. "No, Henry. Now. What did you mean last night? What lie did you live with for 25 years? His jaw clenched. His eyes flicked to the woods as if shadows might be listening. "If I start," he muttered, "you'll look at me the way you look at Damian. I can't." I cut him off. "You already shattered me, Henry. Don't you dare leave me in pieces without the truth." He leaned against a tree, closing his eyes like he was begging forgiveness from bark itself. "Damian isn't the boy we brought home from the hospital," he whispered. The world spun. My chest hollowed out. "What do you mean?" I demanded. Henry shook his head. "That night, you were so weak, Hilda. You lost so much blood. The nurse told me our baby was gone before you ever saw him. The doctor, he had debts, connections I didn't understand. He offered me an exchange. A newborn boy, unclaimed, his mother dead, no family to claim him. I couldn't watch you break, not after all you prayed for that child." I said yes. I told myself it was mercy. I staggered back like his words slapped me harder than the river rocks had. My baby, my real baby, gone before I ever touched him. And the boy I poured my soul into, the boy who grew into a man who'd shove me over a cliff, he was never mine. "But why?" I whispered. My voice cracked like thin glass. "Why keep it from me all these years?" Henry's eyes brimmed, and I'd seen that man hold his own father's coffin without shedding a tear. "Because you looked at Damian like sunlight. You laughed at his baby curls, his first steps, the way he said mama with that lisp. If I told you the truth, you'd look at him different. You'd look at me different. And I couldn't bear that. A sickness bloomed in my gut. For a moment, I wanted to collapse into the dirt and let the forest bury me. But anger kept me upright. "You didn't just lie to me, Henry," I hissed. "You lied to him. You built his whole life on a secret you never intended to tell. And now we're paying for it." Henry winced, his breath rattling. He would have found out anyway. "Melissa." His lips curled around her name like it was poison. "She knows," she told him. The trees swayed as a gust whipped through, and for a second I swore I heard Melissa's laugh in the wind. Sharp, metallic, triumphant. My knees nearly buckled. I thought back to the first time I met her. Damian had brought her home during his junior year of college. She wore a red dress, too much perfume, and eyes that flicked over everything we owned like she was already cataloging it. When I hugged her, her body stiffened like she couldn't stand to be touched. Still, I smiled, convinced myself she was just shy. Henry barely looked at her, and when I asked why, he only muttered, "Some people are storms waiting to happen." Now, standing in those woods with my husband bleeding and broken, I realized he'd seen this storm long before it hit, and he'd kept that too. We limped onward, following the trail until a clearing opened up to the service road. My legs carried me forward, but my heart stayed tangled in the past. Damian's laughter, his tantrums, his silences. I wondered how many of those moments were whispers of bloodlines I never knew. When we reached the road, Henry stopped me with a trembling hand. His voice was gravel. "Hilda, there's more. Things about Melissa, about where she came from, about why she and Damian need us gone. But I need you steady before I tell you." I looked at him. The man I'd loved for 40 years. The father I thought I knew. I wiped blood from his cheek with the edge of my sleeve. "I'm not steady," I said. "But I'm not breaking either. So start talking, Henry. Start talking before silence kills us both." He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a car engine rumbled in the distance. Tires crackled against gravel, coming closer. My heart slammed against my ribs. Henry's eyes widened. "Hide," he hissed. We scrambled into the brush as headlights cut through the morning mist. The car slowed. My breath hitched. I couldn't see the driver yet, but in my bones, I knew. Damian wasn't finished. The car slowed on the gravel road, headlights bleeding through the brush like search beams. My pulse rattled so hard I thought the leaves around me might tremble with it. Henry's hand clamped over mine, slick with mud and blood. The car crept forward, then idled, engine humming low. For 3 eternal seconds, I imagined Damian's eyes sweeping the tree line, Melissa's sharp smile beside him. But then, the car rolled on, its red taillights smearing across the mist until the sound faded. Only when silence returned did Henry exhale, shaky as a child's whistle. "We need to keep moving," he said, his voice rough. We stumbled down the service road, trying to look like 2 hikers who'd simply gotten lost instead of 2 survivors clawing our way out of hell. My body moved on autopilot, but my mind slipped back into the past. The first time Melissa had ever crossed our doorstep. It was fall, late October, leaves piling in the yard faster than we could rake them. Damian had just started his junior year at NYU, and when he called to say he wanted to bring a girl home for dinner, I nearly burst with excitement. I roasted a chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon. I baked an apple pie from scratch. I wanted this girl to feel our home the way I'd always hoped Damian did. Warm, safe, full of love. Melissa arrived in a red dress too bold for the occasion. Her dark hair perfectly sleek, her nails sharp little ovals painted black. She walked through our front door like she was stepping onto a stage, eyes sweeping the living room, the pictures on the walls, the chipped ceramic lamp I'd inherited from my mother. She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Harlow," she said, extending her hand, voice syrupy. "It smells amazing in here." I hugged her anyway. She stiffened in my arms, and for a heartbeat I thought I'd imagined it. But Henry noticed. He didn't say a word, just gave me that look, the one that said, "Don't ignore the storm clouds just because you want sunshine." At dinner, Melissa crossed her legs neatly, napkin folded perfect, every movement calculated. She laughed at Damian's stories, though her eyes never left Henry. When I brought out the apple pie, she leaned back in her chair, studying us like specimens. "You've built a nice life here," she said softly. "So, traditional." I smiled, proud, oblivious. "We've been blessed. Damian's always been the center of it all." Melissa's smile sharpened. "Yes, he seems very lucky." Henry set his fork down, metal clinking against porcelain. He didn't touch the pie. Later that night, after they'd gone upstairs, I found him in the kitchen, staring at the sink like it held answers. "You don't like her?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "I've seen eyes like that before," he murmured. "They don't look at what is. They look at what they can take." I brushed it off then, told myself he was being paranoid. But now, with blood dried on my skin and my son's betrayal still fresh, Henry's words haunted me. Back in the present, we spotted a gas station ahead, the first sign of life since we'd crawled out of the river. Its neon flickered, half dead, casting the parking lot in sickly green. We ducked inside, looking like a pair of ghosts. The cashier, a boy no older than 20, stared as if we'd risen straight from the grave. "You need help?" he asked, reaching for his phone. Henry's hand shot up. "No police," he said firmly. The boy hesitated, then nodded, sliding 2 bottles of water across the counter. I drank greedily, the cool liquid burning down my throat. In the convex mirror above the register, I caught a glimpse of myself, mud-smeared, wild-eyed, older than I'd ever looked. As we left, Henry tugged me into the shadows by the ice machine. His face tightened. "Hilda, there's something about Melissa you need to know. Something I should have told you the night Damian first brought her home." The streetlight buzzed overhead. My heart pounded. "What?" I demanded. Henry swallowed. I recognized her. The words chilled me worse than the night air. "You what?" He nodded grimly. I didn't say anything because I hoped I was wrong. But I wasn't. I'd seen her years before Damian ever laid eyes on her. She was at the courthouse the day I signed the papers, the day I brought Damian home. I blinked, confusion and dread colliding. "What are you talking about? She would have been a child." "Not a child." Henry cut me off, voice low. "A teenager. 15, 16 maybe. Standing in the hallway with a man I never forgot. The man who handed me the envelope. The man who arranged the adoption." My stomach dropped. "You mean Melissa knew? She knew from the very beginning?" Henry's silence was louder than any answer. I staggered back against the wall, the neon light flickering across my face. My skin prickled as the realization sank in. Melissa hadn't just married into our family. She'd been circling us for decades, waiting for her moment. And Damian, poor, foolish Damian, had fallen right into her snare. The neon light from the gas station buzzed in my ears even after Henry and I stumbled back into the night. My mind replayed his words like a scratched record. Melissa was there the day I signed the papers. That meant she hadn't just appeared by chance. She hadn't just fallen for Damian at college. No. Melissa had been orbiting our lives long before we even knew her name. And if Henry was right, she'd been waiting. We kept walking until the town lights blurred into a glow behind us, following the curve of the road that led toward our old neighborhood. Every step was agony, but anger carried me forward. I thought of the years we'd spent building our perfect family, the way we'd prided ourselves on stability, tradition, love, a house with a garden, a dog that barked at mailmen, block parties in summer, church every Sunday morning. That was the picture we painted for the world, and for years, I believed it. But under the brushstrokes, there'd always been cracks. I remember Damian at 12, sitting stiff at the dinner table, while Henry bowed his head for grace. "You thank God for food you already had in the fridge," Damian muttered once, too low for anyone but me to hear. I laughed nervously, tried to brush it off, but it left a splinter inside me. Or the Christmas when he was 17. We opened gifts. The smell of pine and cinnamon thickened the house, and Damian unwrapped the leather jacket we'd saved for months to buy. He slid it on, didn't even smile, just asked, "How much did this cost?" When I told him, he scoffed. "You should have saved the money. I don't need charity." Moments like that were seeds, scattered across years, but I watered them with excuses. He's just moody. Teenagers are difficult. He's still a good boy, and sometimes he was. He'd mow the lawn without being asked. He'd drive his grandmother to her doctor's appointments. He'd sit with me in the kitchen, half listening to my stories while scrolling on his phone. But even in those small kindnesses, something always felt distant, like there was a locked room inside him I'd never been allowed to enter. When Melissa entered the picture, that room only grew darker. After that first dinner, she became a fixture. She'd visit on weekends, bringing expensive wine neither Henry nor I had the palate to appreciate. She'd compliment the house in ways that felt rehearsed. "So cozy," she'd say, eyes drifting over every corner like a realtor preparing a listing. One Saturday afternoon, I caught her standing in the hallway, staring at the family photo from our trip to Cape Cod. Damian was 15 in that picture, gangly and sunburned, but smiling. Melissa tilted her head, studying it like she was memorizing every detail. When I asked if she wanted iced tea, she startled, then flashed that practiced smile. "Sure, Mrs. Harlow," she said, voice smooth, but the look in her eyes, calculating, hungry, lingered long after. Henry grew colder around her. At night, he'd retreat to the garage, pretending to tinker with tools, but I knew he was hiding. When I pressed him, he'd shake his head. "That girl," he'd mutter. "She's not right." I hated his suspicion. I told myself it was paranoia, that he was just being protective. I wanted so badly to believe our family was whole, that Damian had finally found someone who loved him. But little things stacked up. Melissa pushing Damian to skip family dinners, convincing him to spend holidays with her friends instead. Her subtle digs. "You really still cook with that old skillet, Mrs. Harlow? Surprised it hasn't rusted away." Or, "Damian told me you keep cash in the cookie jar." That's quaint. Always with a laugh, always framed as harmless. The final straw should have been the night I overheard her in the kitchen. I'd gone to bed early, but woke thirsty and crept down the stairs. Melissa's voice floated through the dark. "They're weak, Damian. Stuck in the past. You don't need them. You don't owe them." His reply was low, tense. "Don't talk about them like that." Melissa laughed, soft and cutting. "They're not even really your family. You'll see." My chest froze. I stood there in the hallway, my hand gripping the banister so tight my knuckles whitened. I wanted to burst in, demand answers, but fear pinned me still. Fear of hearing something I wasn't ready for. So I went back upstairs, crawled into bed beside Henry, and told myself I'd imagined it. But I hadn't. Now, trudging along that dark road with Henry leaning on me, the weight of every dismissed warning crushed down. Our family hadn't been perfect. It had been an illusion, built on silence and secrets. And Melissa, she hadn't just cracked the glass. She'd been holding the hammer the whole time. We should have told him. I whispered, half to Henry, half to the night. We should have told Damian the truth before she did. Henry groaned, every step labored. Maybe, he admitted, but maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Some kids are born with a hole inside them. Doesn't matter how much love you pour in, it never fills. I didn't answer. My throat closed up because I couldn't accept that. I wouldn't. As the first faint glow of dawn touched the horizon, our neighborhood came into view. From a distance, it looked peaceful. Rows of houses with trimmed lawns, porch lights still glowing, the world carrying on like nothing had happened. But as we turned the corner onto Maple Lane, I stopped dead. Our house, the one we'd built our lives inside, looked wrong. The curtains were ripped from the living room windows. The front door hung slightly open, and parked in the driveway was Damian's car. Melissa wasn't finished. The sight of Damian's car in our driveway made my heart slam so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The house looked hollowed out, like a body missing its soul. Curtains shredded, the door ajar. Our sanctuary had been violated. Henry tightened his grip on my arm. "We can't go in," he said, his voice firm despite the rasp in it. Not yet, but I couldn't move. My eyes stayed glued to the door, the place where I'd hung wreaths every Christmas, the stoop where I'd kissed Damian's forehead before his first day of kindergarten. Now, the paint on the door looked faded, chipped, unfamiliar. "Why would they come back here?" I whispered. Henry's jaw worked, his face a storm. "Because it was never about killing us clean. It's about erasing us, every trace." The words curdled in my stomach. I wanted to ask what he meant, but deep down, I already knew. We slipped behind the hedge across the street, crouching low. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. No barking dogs, no sprinklers hissing, not even a car passing by. Just the soft creak of the front door swinging against the frame. And then, faintly, Melissa's voice. "Move faster. Take what matters." I froze, my nails digging into the dirt beneath me. Henry's face went pale. She was inside. We couldn't hear Damian's reply, but the thud of footsteps across the hardwood made my chest tighten. My home, the walls I painted, the couch I picked, the photos I hung, echoed with the sounds of betrayal. Henry leaned closer to me, his lips brushing my ear. "You need to know something," he said, eyes locked on the house. "Something I found before all this. Something that explains why they won't stop." My body tensed. "What?" He hesitated, and for a second I thought he might choke on the words. But then his eyes hardened, like a man who'd carried a weight too long and finally decided to set it down. "Damian's been running money," Henry said. "Illegal money. Laundering it through fake accounts. Pulling cash from places you don't ask questions about. Melissa's the brains, but he's been in it deep. I found documents, bank statements, names, offshore accounts. Millions, Hilda." My head snapped toward him. "Millions?" He nodded grimly. "And some of it's in our names. Forged. He used our house, our credit, our clean records to cover his tracks. That's why they want us gone. If we're dead, the signatures can't be questioned. The money looks clean, and they get away free." I stared at him, my mind struggling to keep pace. The betrayal was too big, too heavy. It pressed down on my chest until I could barely breathe. "You knew this?" I whispered. "I only pieced it together a month ago," Henry admitted. "I was waiting for the right time to tell you. I thought maybe I could handle it myself before it got this far." He ran a trembling hand over his face. But I underestimated Melissa. I always did. Anger flared inside me, hot enough to burn through the fear. "So what? You thought you could keep another secret? Like you did with Damian's birth?" Henry flinched, but didn't argue. His silence was answer enough. Back in the house, Melissa's voice rose again, sharp as glass. "Damian, stop hesitating. They're gone. This is survival." I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. Gone. That's what she thought we were? Corpses drifting down the Hudson, food for the fish, and she was already stripping our lives bare. I wanted to burst through that front door, scream at her, shake Damian until his bones rattled. But Henry's hand clamped down on my arm. "Not yet," he hissed. "If they see us alive, they'll finish the job. We need proof first. We need the law on our side." The law. It felt laughable. The police had been at our house countless times for block parties, parades, neighborhood watch meetings. But this was a crime so twisted, so close. I didn't know if I could trust anyone to touch it. Still, Henry was right. Charging in would only get us killed for real. We crouched in silence, listening. The shuffle of boxes, the slam of cabinets, Melissa barking orders, Damian saying nothing. My son, or the boy I'd raised as my son, silent as a shadow while his wife gutted our lives. Finally, Melissa's voice cut through the stillness one last time. Load the car. We leave tonight. The slam of the door made me jump. I peered over the hedge just in time to see them dragging bags out to the trunk of Damian's car. My throat closed when I recognized one of the bags. My old leather suitcase. The one I used on our 25th anniversary trip to Cape Cod. Melissa tossed it into the trunk like it was garbage. When the car pulled out of the driveway, taillights glowing red in the dawn, I felt something inside me snap. Fear turned to fury. Betrayal turned to resolve. I grabbed Henry's hand, squeezing hard enough to make him wince. We're not hiding anymore, I said. If they want to erase us, we're going to make damn sure the world knows who did it first. Henry's eyes, tired and hollow, flicked to mine. For the first time since that cliff, I saw the old fire in them. The man who'd built our house with his bare hands, who'd fought through every storm we'd faced together. He nodded once. Then we start digging, he said. And as the sun broke over Maple Lane, shining on the ruins of the life we once called perfect, I realized this story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge. The sun rose higher, throwing gold light over the wreckage of our home. I wanted to step inside, to see what they'd left behind, but Henry stopped me with a hand to my arm. Not yet, he warned. We don't know if they'll circle back. So we waited, huddled in the hedge like fugitives in our own neighborhood. We watched, but the car didn't return. Only when the street grew busy with joggers and kids on bikes did we finally cross the lawn and step through the broken front door. The smell hit me first. Melissa's perfume, heavy and cloying, clinging to every room. My stomach lurched. Furniture was overturned, photo frames shattered. The cookie jar on the counter, our silly hiding spot for extra bills, was empty, the lid cracked. Cabinets gaped open like broken jaws. Our lives, stripped and scattered, just as Henry had said. I bent down, picking up a torn photograph from the floor. It was Damian's 10th birthday party. He wore a crooked paper crown and grinned at the cake. Chocolate smeared across his face. My throat tightened. That little boy couldn't be the same man who dragged my suitcase into his trunk, who watched me fall off a cliff without flinching. But the evidence was right in front of me. Henry lowered himself into a chair, wincing. His face was ashen. We need to gather what's left, he said. Anything they didn't take. Anything that proves what they're doing. I nodded, though my hands shook as I touched each ruined object. It felt like rifling through a coffin. We spent hours searching, collecting scraps. A half-burned notebook Melissa must have tossed into the fireplace but never lit. Shreds of papers, receipts, bank slips, some with Henry's forged signature. A flash drive hidden inside the drawer of his desk, miraculously untouched. Henry pocketed it with a grim nod. But it wasn't just the theft that made the air thick. It was the echo of voices, conversations I remembered, now poisoned by hindsight. Like the night, not long after Melissa moved in with Damian, when I walked past their room and heard them whispering. I hadn't caught much, just Melissa's voice, sharp even when hushed. They'll never respect you, not as long as you're under their roof. Or the evening Henry came in from the garage pale as a ghost. He'd found his tools missing, pawned for cash. When we confronted Damian, he exploded, slamming doors, calling us ungrateful for never appreciating how hard he worked. Melissa sat at the table the whole time, arms folded, smirking like she'd scripted the scene. That smirk haunted me now. I remember one morning especially, a week before everything collapsed. I'd woken early to make coffee. Through the half-cracked kitchen door, I heard Melissa's voice like a snake sliding through the dark. They're weak, Damian. They're clinging to you like anchors. You'll never rise with them chained around your neck. My son's reply was low, tired. They're still my parents. Her laugh, icy, cruel, still echoes in my bones. Parents? Blood doesn't make family. They're nothing to you. And soon, you'll see it. I froze on the stairs that day, clutching the railing, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, but fear sealed my lips. Instead, I slunk back upstairs, convincing myself I'd misunderstood, but I hadn't. Now, standing in the ruins of my kitchen, I could still hear those words. "They're nothing to you." Henry's voice snapped me out of it. "Look at this." He held up the flash drive. "If it has what I think it does, we can prove everything. The laundering, the forgeries, all of it." His eyes flicked to me, heavy with guilt. "But it also proves my lie. Damian's adoption. Melissa must have known what to look for. She knew before he did. That's how she turned him against us." I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "You think she told him straight out?" Henry shook his head. "Not at first. She planted seeds. You know how she is. Whispers, doubts, little things to twist the knife." His jaw clenched. Until the day he was ready to hear it. The weight of it crushed me. All those moments when Damian looked at me with suspicion. All the distance I'd felt but never understood. It had been her voice in his ear, feeding him poison. "Henry," I whispered, my hands trembling. What if he always knew? What if deep down he's always felt it? Henry closed his eyes. "Then that's on me." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of the fridge Melissa hadn't bothered to unplug. Suddenly the phone on the counter rang. I jumped, my heart lurching into my throat. Henry motioned for me to stay still. The caller ID flashed blocked numbers, then stopped after 3 rings. No message, just silence. Henry's face tightened. "They're checking, making sure no one's home." A chill ran down my spine. I realized then, Melissa and Damian weren't just trying to erase us on paper. They were watching, waiting, making sure their loose ends stayed tied. And the worst part? I didn't know if Damian would hesitate next time, or if Melissa would make sure he didn't. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, Henry and I were still sitting in the wreckage of our kitchen, the air thick with dust and silence. Every corner of the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by lies. Lies Melissa had whispered into Damian's ear. Lies Henry had hidden from me for decades. Lies I'd told myself just to keep believing in the family I thought we had. I brushed my hand across the counter, finding scratches where Damian had once carved his initials at 8 years old, hiding from me when he thought I'd be angry. I had smiled then, thinking, he wants to leave his mark. Now those grooves felt like scars, proof that even back then, he'd been carving out a truth I never saw. Henry slid the flash drive into his pocket. "We'll need a computer," he said. "But not here. Not where they'll come back." Before I could answer, the phone rang again. Same blocked number. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. This time it went to voicemail. Seconds later, the old machine on the wall crackled. Melissa's voice. "Henry, Hilda, I hope you're listening. I told Damian it was over, but he doesn't like to let go. You should have stayed gone. You should have let the river finish what we started." She laughed, low and cold. "But then again, maybe it's better this way. At least now you'll finally see the truth. You never had a son. You had a shadow." The message ended with a click that echoed through the hollow house. Henry's fist slammed against the counter. "She wants us scared," he growled. "She wants us broken." But I was already broken, because Melissa's words, cruel as they were, carried an edge of truth I couldn't deny. Damian wasn't mine. He never had been. I'd built my life around a child who wasn't born from me, who didn't carry my blood, who, God help me, may have never carried my love, no matter how much I poured into him. Henry's voice cut through my spiral. "Don't you believe her? He was your son. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every hug. That was real. You gave him everything. Don't let her take that away." But in my heart, doubt had already dug its claws deep. The sound of tires outside jolted us both. Headlights swept across the living room wall. Henry yanked me down behind the couch. My pulse roared in my ears. For a moment, I thought they'd come back. But after a few tense minutes, the lights moved on, disappearing down the street. We exhaled in shaky unison. "Tomorrow," Henry whispered. "We go to the police." But tomorrow felt too far away. Because that night, as we tried to sleep in the shell of our house, Damian came back. Not in flesh, but in memory. I dreamed of the night 3 months earlier, when I confronted him about the missing money from our savings account. I'd noticed withdrawals, hundreds at a time, slipping through fingers I never saw. I asked him calmly, mother to son, "Damian, are you in trouble?" His face twisted. "Why would you even think that?" "Because the bank called," I said gently. "And they said—" He cut me off, his voice sharp as a blade. "You're paranoid, Mom. You always have been. You can't stand that I have my own life, my own choices." I remember the way he stood in the doorway, towering, his shadow stretching across the carpet. For the first time, I felt fear, not of losing him, but of him. When Henry tried to intervene, Damian laughed in his face. "You think you're so smart, Dad, but you don't know anything. You don't know me." And Melissa, sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, smirked like a puppeteer watching her strings tighten. Back in the present, I jolted awake on the floor of our ruined living room, the dream still clinging to me like cobwebs. Henry was already up, hunched over a folder he must have pulled from his desk in the night. Papers spilled across the coffee table. "What is that?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Proof," Henry said, sliding a page toward me. "Look." My eyes fell on the document. A loan agreement, dated months ago, with our names signed at the bottom, but the handwriting wasn't ours. My stomach flipped. "That's my name," I whispered. "But I didn't sign this." Henry's face hardened. "Neither did I. Damian did." The world tilted. My son hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen us. Our names, our lives, our futures. And suddenly, Melissa's voicemail made perfect sense. "You never had a son. You had a shadow. Because the boy I raised, the boy I thought I knew, had become a stranger willing to erase us, not just from life, but from existence." I sank onto the couch, clutching the paper, my tears hot and bitter. Henry sat beside me, his hand heavy on mine. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "There's more, a lot more, and if we're going to survive this, we have to face all of it." I nodded, though my throat ached, because deep down I knew this wasn't just betrayal, it was war. The day before Damian and Melissa led us to that overlook, everything felt wrong before it even began. The house smelled like garlic bread and red wine, but underneath it lingered something sour, something I couldn't name. Melissa had insisted we come for dinner. "One last family night before Damian and I go away for the weekend," she said over the phone, her voice like sugar poured over arsenic. Henry didn't want to go. His gut had been screaming for weeks, but I pushed him. I told myself if I didn't, Melissa would only tighten her claws around Damian, and we'd lose him completely. So we went. Melissa opened the door with that wide, painted smile, arms spread like she was welcoming us to our own funeral. "There they are," she said, her voice bright. "My favorite in-laws." Henry muttered something under his breath, but I forced a smile. Damian came up behind her, wrapping his arm around her waist. He looked tired. His eyes ringed in shadows, but his jaw was set, like a man bracing himself for a storm. The table was already set when we stepped into the dining room. Candles flickered, their light bouncing off wine glasses. Melissa had laid out spaghetti, salad, warm bread. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt staged, like a set on a play. We sat. Conversation stumbled like a drunk man down an alley. Melissa kept steering it, asking about neighbors, about bills, about Henry's pension. She smiled too much, laughed too loud. Damian barely spoke. When I asked about work, he just shrugged, shoveling food into his mouth like he wanted to get it over with. At one point, Henry caught my eye across the table. His look said, "See?" but I ignored it. I wanted so badly to believe this dinner meant something, that maybe they were trying to repair what was broken. Then Melissa lifted her glass. "To family," she said, her eyes glinting. Damian raised his glass half-heartedly. Henry didn't move. I clinked mine against Melissa's, the sound sharp, almost mocking. Halfway through the meal, Melissa leaned forward, her voice dropping into something softer. "We've been thinking. There's this overlook by the river. The view is breathtaking. Why don't we all go tomorrow? A family trip. One last memory before Damian and I start the next chapter of our lives." Her eyes locked onto mine when she said it, and my stomach twisted. Something about the way she said one last memory made my skin crawl. Henry cleared his throat. "We're busy tomorrow." Melissa's smile didn't falter. "It's just a drive. Come on, Henry, don't be such a grump. Damian finally spoke then, his voice flat. It'll mean a lot to Melissa. That shut Henry up. He stabbed at his spaghetti, his fork scraping the plate. I tried to ease the tension. Sure, I said with a weak smile. It'll be nice. We haven't done a trip in a while. But deep inside, my chest screamed. After dinner, Melissa insisted on making dessert. While she clattered in the kitchen, I followed Damian into the hallway. His shoulders were slumped, his hands shoved into his pockets. Damian, I whispered. Are you okay? He didn't look at me. His jaw clenched. I'm fine. You don't look fine, I pressed. If something's wrong, you can tell me. Whatever it is, we can fix it. That's when he turned. His eyes, those same hazel eyes I'd kissed goodnight 1,000 times, were hard as stone. Stop pretending, he said, his voice low. Stop acting like you don't know. My blood ran cold. Know what? He shook his head and walked away, leaving me in the hallway with my heart pounding. Later that night, back at home, I told Henry what Damian had said. Henry's face darkened, but he didn't speak. He just stood there, staring out the window into the dark, his fists clenching and unclenching. What do you think he meant? I asked. Henry finally turned, his voice like gravel. I think Melissa told him. I swallowed hard. Told him what? He didn't answer, but I didn't need him to. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Damian's childhood. Every smile, every hug, every scraped knee I'd bandaged. All of it suddenly fragile, as if one word from Melissa could shatter 25 years of love. By morning, I was exhausted, but I forced myself up, put on a sweater, and braided my hair like I always did for family outings. When Melissa's car pulled into the driveway, I smiled through the terror twisting in my gut. I told myself it was just a trip, just a drive, just a view by the river. But deep down, I knew. Somewhere inside, I already knew. The morning of the trip was bright, the kind of autumn morning where the air carries a crisp sweetness, like apples and smoke. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was the perfect day for a family outing. Melissa pulled up in her silver SUV, the engine purring like a predator. Damian sat behind the wheel, his face tight, unreadable. Ready? Melissa sang as we stepped outside. She wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf knotted perfectly around her neck, like she was headed for brunch instead of whatever this was. Henry grumbled under his breath but slid into the back seat beside me. The car smelled of leather and Melissa's perfume, vanilla, cloying, nauseating. Damian kept his eyes on the road, hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles whitened. We drove in silence for a long time. The suburbs slipped away, replaced by winding country roads, trees blazing with fall colors, gold, crimson, rust. It would have been beautiful if not for the knot in my stomach. Melissa chatted idly about nothing, restaurants she wanted to try, a movie she'd seen, a friend's baby shower. Her words were bright, but hollow, bouncing off the tension that filled the car. At one point, I glanced at Damian in the rearview mirror. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second before darting away. The look was sharp, almost guilty. Or maybe I only wanted to believe that. The road narrowed as we climbed, twisting along the cliffs above the Hudson. The river glittered below, calm and wide, as if it knew the secrets we carried. My palms grew damp. Henry shifted beside me, his knee bumping mine. Finally, the car slowed, crunching onto gravel. Melissa turned in her seat, her smile fixed. Here we are. Isn't it breathtaking? I looked out the window at the overlook. The guardrail had long since rusted away, leaving nothing but open air between us and the drop. 90 feet down, the river churned against jagged rocks. My heart hammered. We climbed out of the car. The wind whipped sharp against my face, pulling at my sweater. Melissa's scarf fluttered like a banner. She walked ahead, gesturing grandly toward the view. See? Worth the drive, right? Henry muttered. Let's take a quick look and go. Damian lagged behind us, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. I slowed my pace until I was beside him. Damian, I whispered, please, if something's wrong, tell me. He didn't answer. He just kept walking, his jaw tight. Melissa stopped at the edge, arms spread wide like she was presenting us to the world. Closer, she urged, her smile wide. Don't be afraid. You've got to feel the wind from up here. Something in her tone made the hairs on my neck rise. Henry hung back, but Melissa turned, her eyes flashing. "Come on, don't ruin it." And then it happened. In one swift motion, Damian stepped forward. His hands shot out. I felt the shove between my shoulder blades, sharp and sudden. The ground vanished. The sky spun. I remember the sound. Henry's shout, Melissa's laugh, the rush of wind tearing past my ears. Then impact. The world shattered into rocks and water. Pain exploded through my body, blinding, searing. The river swallowed me whole. I tumbled, my limbs twisting, lungs burning. When I broke the surface, gasping, Henry's face appeared beside me, blood streaking down his temple. "Don't move," he rasped, his voice barely audible over the roar of water. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." I froze, every instinct screaming to fight, to claw my way to shore. But Henry's grip on my shoulder forced me still. I let the river cradle me, limp, praying Melissa wasn't watching from above. Through the haze of pain, I heard her voice, faint but clear. "It's done." Then a car door slammed. Tires crunched gravel. The engine roared, and they were gone. We floated there, broken, the water carrying us like discarded trash. My chest heaved with sobs I couldn't let escape. Henry leaned close, his breath hot in my ear. "There's something you need to know," he whispered, "before we get out of here, before it's too late." My heart lurched. "What?" His lips trembled against my skin. "Damian, he was never—" He coughed, choking on blood. "He was never your son." The words pierced me deeper than the fall. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but the river pulled me along, and all I could do was let it carry us, my mind shattering piece by piece. Because in that moment, I lost everything. My son, my trust, my faith in the family I thought I'd built. And yet, somehow, Henry and I weren't dead. Not yet. The river dragged us like ragdolls, slamming us against hidden rocks, spinning us through whirlpools of mud and foam. My lungs begged for air, but Henry's hand stayed heavy on my shoulder, forcing me to float limp, to trust the current, even as it tried to tear me apart. When the sound of tires above finally faded, when Melissa's laugh no longer echoed in my ears, Henry let go. "Sure," he croaked, blood bubbling at his lips. "We need—" "Sure." I kicked weakly, my limbs screaming, every bone inside me rattling like shattered glass. The reeds along the bank blurred in and out of sight. Finally, we caught a branch, dragged ourselves onto the muddy bank, collapsed like corpses reborn. I lay there, coughing river water, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. Beside me, Henry was pale, his chest heaving. He turned his head, his eyes wild but focused. "Hilda," he rasped. "Listen to me. I don't know how long I have." "Don't you say that?" I snapped, though my voice broke. "Don't you dare." He grabbed my hand, squeezing weakly. "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you 25 years ago. Damian. Damian isn't—" His breath hitched, pain cutting through his words. "He isn't ours." The air left my lungs in one violent rush. My heart stopped, then slammed back to life in a rhythm that felt foreign. I shook my head, refusing. "No," I whispered. "No, Henry. Don't you lie to me now. It's the truth," he said, his voice cracked but steady. "The night you gave birth, our baby didn't survive. You'd lost so much blood, Hilda. You were unconscious. The doctor, he had debts, connections to men I should have never trusted. He offered me another child, a baby boy, born that same night. His mother dead, no family to claim him. I couldn't let you wake up to nothing. I couldn't let you break. So I said yes." The river roared in my ears, louder than before. My hands shook, clutching mud, needing to hold something real. "No," I said again, my voice sharper this time. "That's not true. I remember Damian in my arms, the way he looked at me." Henry's eyes brimmed with tears. "You remember what I let you believe. I placed him in your arms and told you he was ours. And from that moment, he was. In every way that mattered, he was. But the words couldn't stitch the hole opening inside me. Images flashed. Damian's first steps, his laughter as I chased him in the yard, his voice calling me Mom when he was scared of thunderstorms. Every memory, once golden, now cracked down the middle. "You lied to me," I whispered, my voice hollow. Henry's jaw trembled. I lied to save you. I pulled my hand from his grasp, clutching my chest. And what about him, Henry? What about Damian? You built his life on a secret you never meant to tell. No wonder he hates us. No wonder Melissa turned him. You robbed him of the truth. Henry shut his eyes, pain twisting his features. I thought I was protecting us all, but I see now. I was just buying time, and now the bills come due. Silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of the river. I felt cold seep into my bones, a cold deeper than water. Finally, I forced myself to ask, though dread coiled tight in my gut. Then who is he? Who were his real parents? Henry swallowed, his throat working like it might collapse. His mother was nobody, a girl who died in labor. But his father was somebody, a man with power, a man who didn't want a child tied to his name. The doctor arranged it quietly, for money. I never knew his name. Not then. I stared at him, bile rising in my throat. So you brought a stranger's child into our home and told me he was mine, and you thought it would never matter? Henry's voice cracked. I thought love would be enough. I wanted to scream, to curse him, to claw at the earth until it swallowed me whole. But then another memory slid into place. The night I'd overheard Melissa whispering to Damian in the kitchen. They're not your family. You'll see. She had known. She'd used the truth like a knife, cutting into the wound Henry had buried for decades. And Damian, my son, not by blood but by 25 years of love, had let her. My hands curled into fists. We're not dead, I said, my voice trembling but fierce. Do you hear me, Henry? We're not dead. And if Melissa thinks she can erase us, if Damian thinks he can trade us for money and lies, they're both about to find out just how alive we are. Henry managed a weak smile, blood on his teeth. That's my girl. The wind whipped across the river, carrying the cry of a hawk. I pulled Henry to his feet, my body screaming in protest, and together we staggered into the trees. Each step hurt, but the pain fueled me, because now I knew the truth, and the truth would be my weapon. The forest pressed in around us as we stumbled through the undergrowth, the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves clinging to our clothes. Henry leaned heavily on me, his breath short and ragged, but I didn't let us stop. We had to put distance between us and that river, distance between us and the echo of Melissa's laughter. When we finally collapsed beneath a cluster of maples, the silence was heavy, suffocating. I pressed my palm against Henry's chest, counting each uneven beat like I could, will his heart to keep going. He coughed, blood streaking his lips, and looked at me with eyes that had carried 40 years of secrets. There's more you need to know, he rasped. I braced myself. After what he'd told me already, I wasn't sure I could take another truth, but I nodded. Henry swallowed hard. I found out his father's name. Years after we brought Damian home, the doctor who arranged it, he got drunk one night. He slipped. He said the man's name like it was a curse. Henry's voice dropped, heavy with shame. Vincent Morelli. The name hit me like a punch. Even I knew it. Everyone in Westchester County knew it. Morelli was a ghost story whispered about in diners and church basements. A man tied to every illegal business that slithered through New York. Gambling, racketeering, loan sharks. He was the kind of man mothers warned their children about. And he was Damian's blood. I shook my head, dizzy. No, Henry. That's impossible. It's the truth, he said. I wanted to bury it, but Melissa found it. She must have dug through my files. Maybe the ones I hid in the garage. She figured it out and told Damian. She didn't just marry him, Hilda. She groomed him. She fed him his own anger and turned him into his father's son. My stomach twisted. Images of Damian as a boy came rushing back. The time he lied about stealing money from my purse. The fights at school he swore weren't his fault. The way he sometimes looked at Henry with a defiance too sharp for his years. I had chalked it all up to stubbornness, to teenage rebellion. But maybe those shadows weren't just from growing pains. Maybe they were inherited. Still, I couldn't accept it. Not fully. He was ours, I whispered. We raised him. We gave him love. That should have mattered more than blood. Henry's eyes softened, but his voice was steady. Maybe it did, for a while. But Melissa gave him something else. Permission to hate us. Permission to believe every lie she whispered. And with Morelli blood in his veins, it didn't take much to tip him over. Tears burned my eyes. But rage burned hotter. Rage at Henry for hiding the truth. Rage at Melissa for poisoning him. Rage at Damian for letting her. I thought of the night I overheard them. The venom in Melissa's voice. They're not even your family. She hadn't just been cruel. She'd been telling him the truth, piece by piece, until it became the only truth he wanted to hear. Henry's hand trembled as he reached for mine. I never told you because I thought we could outrun it. I thought if we gave him love, he'd never need to know the rest. But love doesn't erase bloodlines, Hilda. Sometimes it just covers them until someone cruel enough peels it back. I pulled my hand away, pressing it to my chest, trying to hold myself together. So what now? We crawl to the police and tell them our son is laundering money for criminals, that he tried to kill us? They'll laugh us out of the station. Henry shook his head, determination flickering in his tired eyes. Not if we show them proof. That flash drive, it's got records, transfers, offshore accounts. Enough to tie him and Melissa to Morelli's network. Enough to bury them. His words steadied me, even as my heart cracked. Damian wasn't just lost. He was dangerous. And if we didn't stop him, he'd finish what he started. The sound of twigs snapping nearby froze us both. I held my breath, my heart slamming. Through the trees, faint voices drifted. Male, sharp, urgent. My blood turned to ice. Henry's lips barely moved. They're looking for us. We slid deeper into the underbrush, crouching low. My knees screamed, my body raw from the fall, but fear pushed me silent. As the voices drew closer, I thought of Damian's face as he pushed me over the edge. Blank, cold, unreachable. The boy I once held in my arms was gone. In his place stood Vincent Morelli's son, and Melissa had made sure of it. The voices grew louder, crunching through the underbrush. I pressed Henry down against the damp earth, every muscle in my body taut. My lungs burned, begging me to breathe louder. But I forced the air through my nose in shallow, silent sips. A flashlight beam sliced through the trees, dancing over trunks and leaves. My heart hammered. Spread out, a man barked, his voice sharp. Check the banks. If they crawled out, they didn't get far. Henry's grip tightened on my hand. His skin was clammy, his pulse racing under my fingers. We stayed flat until the beam moved away, footsteps trampling past us, fading toward the river. When the forest stilled again, Henry exhaled, his whole body shaking. "We can't stay here," he whispered. I nodded, though fear locked my legs in place. Moving meant noise. Noise meant death, but staying meant they'd find us eventually. So I pulled Henry up, draping his arm across my shoulders. We stumbled deeper into the woods, our steps muffled by the carpet of leaves. Each crack of a branch made me flinch. Each gust of wind felt like it carried Melissa's perfume, taunting me. Hours blurred together. The forest swallowed us, endless and indifferent. My stomach twisted with hunger, my throat raw from thirst. But worse than the physical ache was the war inside me. Every step, I replayed Damian's face, the boy with chocolate smeared on his cheeks, the teenager sulking at Christmas, the man who shoved me off a cliff. I wanted to believe he was still in there, buried under Melissa's poison. I wanted to believe love could pull him back. But then Henry's words echoed. Sometimes love just covers the bloodline, until someone cruel peels it back. What if Melissa hadn't created this darkness? What if she'd only unleashed it? We stopped in a hollow where the trees thickened, shielding us from view. Henry collapsed against a log, wheezing. I crouched beside him, pressing my ear to his chest. His heartbeat was faint, but steady. "Rest," I whispered. "Just a little." But Henry shook his head, his eyes